There's another chance to see tonight's brand new episode of Sea Fever here on BBC4 at 1:15. First, though, our nose around the world of wine continues at the Chateau Margo.
This place, it's the image, you know, Margaux, there is a wine, of course, and the prestige of the wine is the chateau. So when people come here, they must arrive in a place which is magnificent, you know, like the wine. And of course, you know, everything must be impeccable, we say.
Perfect.
Perfect.
It's nice, huh? It's very impressive, very intimidating.
Corinne Mentzelopoulos is the chatelaine of Margaux. She inherited this temple to wine from her father, a Greek supermarket tycoon who bought it in 1977.
Attends, je suis fatiguée, Zorba. I'm tired, don't knock me over. Don't knock me over. Oui, je t'aime. Je t'aime.
Do you remember first coming here?
Yes. I don't remember the chateau that well. It's funny, I remember the cellar. And I remember my father signing, taking the hand of the owners and saying it's a done deal. That I remember. But the chateau, it's funny, it's a blur in my head.
Chateau Margaux is regarded by some as the greatest wine estate in the world, the very pinnacle of wine culture. One of the sacred group of 5 Bordeaux chateaux known as the First Growths, Margaux has a global following and commands gobsmacking prices. A good vintage can cost upwards of £1,000 a bottle.
We have to deal with nature. So we don't create scarcity. We have real scarcity. We're farmers. You have great vintages and then you have a lesser vintage. You're not in control.
This is the story of the creation of one vintage at Margaux, the 2008, that may or may not prove to be a blockbuster. But it is also the story of a cultural icon that commands almost religious devotion. Margaux's objective is perfection, and those who aspire to drink it seek a form of personal transformation. And yet, every Eden has its serpent. And in the Margaux wonderland, the one thing over which there is no control is the one thing that really matters. The weather. It is the weather that will determine the fortunes and future of the chateau. Today, at the end of March, Chateau Margaux is in the process of showing off its wines to the world. And on show is the 2007 vintage, when the weather was dreadful. In Bordeaux, no one ever talks about a bad vintage. At its worst, a year may be described as modest. By common consent, 2007 was a modest year for Bordeaux generally, but for Paul Pontallier, director and chief winemaker, the task today is to convince the visitors that Margaux triumphed over the elements.
I know by experience that this wine in 30 or 40 years' time will still be fresh, pleasant, for people who are interested in drinking, not just collecting. These vintages are wonderful. They are at the very heart of Chateau Margaux's gift, which is exactly to produce wines with that extra level of subtlety, finesse and balance.
purchase wines for Korean and Japan people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they auction Christie's.
Okay, you share.
Yeah, many region people in the same
The Bordeaux first growths have long ceased to be the preserve of the claret-drinking countries of old Europe.
Asia is becoming a very important
Very important.
market. It's not that high, but it's growing fast.
As custodian of Margaux, Paul is a celebrity in the world of wine, and sprinkling his stardust on the visitors is all part of the sales process.
So it's difficult to know.
Margaux produces 3 wines in all. The celebrated Grand Vin itself, a lesser red made from the grapes that didn't quite make the grade, and a Sauvignon Blanc. Over the next 2 weeks, about 2,000 brokers, merchants and journalists will visit. Their feedback will help determine how much Margaux will charge for the wine.
So you're pleased with 07?
I think people will, in general, find it better than expected. The first question we had this morning was, so how did you do with the terrible weather? We said, wait a minute, there was a terrible weather, but we waited, and then we harvested in perfect conditions.
Beautifully pure.
And it's refreshing.
It's very refreshing, yeah.
I've swallowed mine. I've been drinking quite a lot today. That's why I'm in such a good mood. In fact, I'm wiped out, you know.
There has been a wine estate at Margaux since the 17th century. And some of the practices have remained unchanged ever since. The cellar workers are racking the wine. It's a sort of decanting process that ensures that sediment doesn't build up. The wine is poured from one barrel to another, and the candle allows the workers to see when the sediment appears. There are about 1,300 barrels of the 2006 vintage, currently spending their second and final year in the cellars.
Ah, ça nous arrive de le goûter, oui. Pas régulièrement parce que bon, on le travaille si on le goûtait, mais bon, une fois dans la journée, comme ça, quand on travaille, on goûte un petit peu et oui, puis ça fait partie aussi du travail de voir si, de suivre l'évolution du vin en fait. Voilà.
Although the cellar looks like something from the Da Vinci Code, it was built in 1982, part of a series of massive investments since the Greeks arrived in the Médoc. The collective memory of Margaux is contained in this cellar, where the spiders are not just for decoration, they eat the pests that might otherwise eat the corks. In the course of his professional duties, Paul has tasted every vintage that survives, a process of enlightenment that has turned him into Margaux's greatest evangelist.
1848 was really thought to be one of the most fabulous vintages. 1870 is another legendary vintage, so young, so fresh. 1900, probably the most legendary Margaux. 1914, 1916, I think we have 1917. 43 is still very fine. 43 expresses the sheer beauty and charm of its terroir. Quintessential. 59, of course, everybody remembers 59 because it was very hot beauty, subtlety, refinement, pleasure, elegance, softness, depth and length. 61, it's considered to be the most successful post-war vintage in Bordeaux before 82. 76, well, it's quite a good vintage actually. 76 since 82, we have been an amazing row of great vintages. Margaux has the kind of wisdom, I think, not to show off its power, but to hide it behind its charm and elegance. It's not just fermented juice. Wine is so complex, so interesting, we want to understand it more. It can be philosophical. Wine is so close to ourselves. Its lifespan, its life expectancy is more or less ours. It's hard to believe that the world can turn bad when it's so interested in wine, because wine is something so great. I mean, which which fundamentally brings people together.
The French have a word that summarizes their view of why their wine is the best in the world. Terroir. It refers to the soil, the climate, the place, an almost genetic quality that stamps different vintages with familial traits. Elsewhere in the world there are doubters, but not at Margaux. It is the holy creed and central mystery of Margaux. It is upon the terroir that Margaux bases its claim for greatness, and on which it can base its prices. And it is on this terroir that Gilbert is reposting the vines.
Eh bien, apparemment, le terroir, il est très bon, puisque ça a fait un Château Margo. Donc je pense qu'il ne doit pas être mauvais, le terroir. Et bon, toutes les parcelles ne sont pas en grand vin. Mais là, c'est un mélange de grave et de terre noire. Bon, déjà parce que la vigne, elle a 55 ans. Voilà, parce que l'âge de la vigne, il fait aussi. On arrive plus à obtenir des qualités dans de la vieille vigne, parce qu'il y a moins de production. Donc automatiquement, du fait qu'il y a moins de production, il y a une meilleure qualité.
At the beginning of April, the vineyard workers' task for the year is just starting. Above all, to ensure the health of the vines. Every weapon will be deployed to this end, even sexual ones. Little capsules of pheromones have been placed on the vines to sow confusion among moths when it comes to the mating season. With no procreation, there will be no caterpillars to munch on the grapes. The true quality of the vintage won't be determined until the summer. But a very great deal indeed is riding on the fate of these buds. The vintage of a wine is above all a record of the weather, but there's more at stake than simple quality. For a first-growth chateau, a blockbuster vintage can mean blockbuster prices. The last great year was 2005, when plentiful sunshine was complemented by just enough rainfall. It was sold by the chateau for a record-breaking €350 a bottle, and the price has been going up ever since. Margaux would be very happy for 2008 to be another 05. Nature provides the raw ingredients, but the human factor is equally important. Alain, the cooper, makes about 400 barrels a year. And today the winemaking team are tasting different samples aged in different barrels.
C'est très gentiment construit. Oui, c'est ça.
C'est gourmand.
Ça manque juste de densité.
Et après, ça s'arrête.
De chair et de longueur. Mais sur le plan aromatique, c'est très très bon. We just try to upgrade a little bit our experience each year.
But it isn't oak dominating the day's agenda. 2 months after the 07s were tasted, they are about to be released onto the market. How much to charge is the biggest business decision of the year. The timing is critical, and chateaus release when they think the market will be most in the mood for their wine. Until they release, the price remains a closely guarded secret. Out in the vineyards, the other ladies of Margaux are preoccupied with the 08 vintage. The 11th that Veronique has helped to produce, and her daughter Céline's 4th.
Moi, je voulais pas qu'elle rentre la vigne. C'est très très dur. C'est vrai que la vigne, c'est intéressant, mais les inconvénients, c'est le dos, c'est le temps, et puis bon, c'est quand même assez dur, ouais, le visage et tout le reste, on prend tous les temps, c'est très très dur.
On prend les rides plus vite.
On vieillit plus vite.
Il y a de la pommade. Ça va.
Tradition dictates that certain jobs are done only by the women. Céline and Veronique are trellising the vines. helping to ensure that the grapes will be exposed to what every good vintage needs. Sunshine.
On va le savoir rien que pendant les vendanges. On ne peut pas le savoir avant, parce qu'il peut y avoir tellement de problèmes. Aujourd'hui, bon, le temps est bon. Dans une semaine, si ça se trouve, tout peut se dégrader. On ne peut pas savoir. C'est quand la récolte est ramassée que là, quand même, là, les patrons sont rassurés. Ils sont contents quand la récolte est ramassée.
Among the top Bordeaux chateaux, the wine is sold to Bordeaux brokers who sell it on to the rest of the world. In the last couple of hours, the wine that was tasted in April has been released. A snip at €200 a bottle.
There we go. Wow. Wow. Okay, on one of the most important brokers, we have 100% of response done, positive.
And they ask for more.
So it's got to be a successful sale. So, and then of course, every time it's successful, we start asking, it's too cheap. And every time, but oui, évidemment, if somebody buys it, you think it's too cheap. It's
when the buyer is so
eternal
happy
question.
to buy, there is something,
You
there's
think-
something wrong about that.
And every time it happens. C'est vrai ou c'est pas vrai?
At any one time in Margaux, there are 3 vintages on the go. The one growing in the vineyards, the one being sold, and the one before that which must be bottled before it's dispatched around the world. There were 150,000 bottles of the 2006 Grand Vin. Released for €3,000 a case, that's a potential revenue of €37 million, although normally the chateau holds back a percentage of the production. Such a valuable commodity requires the strictest security to prevent fraud. Each bottle is etched with its own unique serial number. Meanwhile, a microchip will record the temperature at which the wine is stored hour by hour, bad storage being the main reason that wine gets ruined. Even though Margaux uses the finest corks money can buy, a percentage are still faulty. As a result, a radical experiment is underway. Chateau Margo is road testing screw caps and synthetic corks.
Bon. Plus tendre.
Oui,
Tendre.
voilà, plus tendre.
Et plus tendre.
Moi, j'ai trouvé plus sec aussi.
Oui, c'est ça.
Au point de vue nez, qu'est-ce que vous avez trouvé?
Alors celui-là, c'est celui que j'aime le moins.
Moi aussi.
Ouais.
Alors,
lui, il a un nez
il y a quelque
un peu
chose
particulier. Ouais.
Ouais,
Il y a un
ouais.
nez très particulier.
Voilà.
Un petit peu
Je
regardé.
trouve aussi, ouais.
J'ai du mal à savoir quoi.
Ouais, moi j'étais un peu pris à un moment donné. Ouais, je savais pas trop si c'était pas un peu moisissure. Enfin, non,
Oui,
non, mais
c'est
enfin,
pas le bouchon.
Non, non, mais c'est pour ça que.
Alors,
Non, non,
c'est-
c'est pas bouchon.
Ça peut pas être.
Mais ouais, ouais.
Mais c'est un nez un peu, oui.
C'est un nez un peu bizarre.
Ouais, ouais. J'ai l'impression de sentir,
Alors qu'est-ce que c'est ça? C'est le bouchon. C'est celui-là.
C'est le synthé.
Ouais, bouchon synthétique. We actually, generally, we don't rule out any option. The real point, our real challenge, is to produce the best possible Chateau Margo, which is why we have started this experiment with enough bottles to go on tasting during the next 30 years. Because, of course, we couldn't take a decision today to go for a screw cap or to stay with natural cork. We lack of background. We shall do these kind of tastings probably once a year or once every 2 years, just to know how the wine changes, but we can only take a decision in at least 25 years. At this stage, we can't draw any conclusion at all, which is why we have to wait.
With a decision not expected until sometime in the 2030s, for the time being, the traditional cork is safe. At the end of July, Veronique is having one final till of the terroir before the vineyard workers break for the summer.
Le thon, cette année, a été bien?
Le temps?
Oui.
Non. Non, on n'a pas eu beaucoup de chaleur. Il a plu, il n'a pas fait... Ça fait pousser l'herbe. L'herbe, cette année, on en a eu beaucoup. Pour nous, c'est bien parce que bon, il faisait pas trop chaud. Mais bon, pour la vigne... Déjà, on n'est pas en avance pour les raisins. Parce que d'habitude, ils ont viré, ils ont changé de couleur. Et cette année, ils sont encore verts. Et on a bien entre 15 jours et 20 jours de retard. Mais bon, c'est le temps.
Before they go on holiday, the workers have a lunch. The money to pay for it has been raised by selling off old bits of vineyard wire. The paycheck is followed closely by a seafood platter and, one of the perks of the job, a few bottles of the house wine.
Il y a beaucoup de femmes là-bas.
À la manger. Un peu de repos, ça fera du bien.
Corinne's father, André Mentzelopoulos, was a Greek businessman whose formative wine experiences consisted of wretched. He bought Margaux in 1977, when a run of dreadful vintages had brought the chateau to its lowest ebb, and ploughed his very considerable fortune into the cellars and vineyard.
Salut!
He died in 1980, before the fruits of his labours could be appreciated, and Corinne took over aged 27.
When I came for the first time with my father as a young woman from Paris, you know, I was imagining a rich land. And I see those pebbles and only gravel. And the people here start explaining to me that's where we get the best soil. And I'm thinking, sure, you know, do they really think I'm going to believe that? And it turns out I quickly learned, and especially over the years, that it's true. That here basically nothing grows in those best soils except vines. The soil just needs to be well taken care of. Like a child, help it, you know, if he's good, and this soil has a genius, the best soils of Bordeaux, you know, you help him express its genius. Look at those stones. We suffer because it's one of our best pieces, but we have to let it rest for 5 years.
Looks like a car park.
Oh. Oh. How could you ever say such a thing? Look. Pebbles. Nothing. This is exactly the perfection for a vineyard. Pebbles, gravels. Even after 4 years, nothing grows on its own. Only vines. Zorba! Viens ici.
Paul was one of Corinne's early appointments. Armed with a doctorate on the barrel aging of red wines, he too took on the job when he was 27. 2008 will be his 26th vintage of Margaux.
I'm looking at the first berry which has changed color. This is the very beginning here of what we call the veraison, which is the very first start of the maturation process. So it's very interesting. It's a crucial period because this is when very serious things start. The real maturation process, which obviously will bring the grapes to hopefully full maturity, depending on the weather. What now starts to be at stake is the quality of the vintage. All will depends on the weather of the next 2 months, August, September. August is crucial because this is the period when the grapes start to ripen, and depending on the weather in August, it will mean either a great vintage or not. Now, if August is not great, September can save the crop, but we will not be the possibility of having a great vintage. The worst thing will probably be a very wet month.
Sometimes it is the tangential detail that reveals the larger picture. In the Bordeaux region during the month of August, ice cream sales fell by 73%. Rainfall was 39% above average, while both the hours of sunshine and the temperature were well below what is required for a great vintage.
How would you describe August?
So, you know, it wasn't too nice. August wasn't too nice. I mean, it's not, you know, a real good summer. We hope that September will be good. If it's nice, not like today, of course, we could have, you know, better wine.
We are now in one of the most critical periods of the year, when the weather will define the quality of the vintage. Either great, very good, good.
On doit avoir encore des belles journées. D'ailleurs, c'est ce qu'il faudrait là maintenant. Il faut des belles journées pour que ça mûrisse mieux.
The kind of weather we have precisely now is obviously not a priori what I would have expected.
Mais après, si ça continue à trop pleuvoir, même qu'il soit pas mûr, il va pourrir. C'est un nid. Ah, la grappe elle est touchée là.
Sometimes it rains and you tend to think, oh, this is bad luck, but actually it proves necessary, and sometimes not.
Ah, mais il faut en sorte, comment dire, que ça soit un grand millésime. Eh oui.
Despite the weather, life must go on. And Chateau Margo is expecting a visitor.
It's an honor. Not a lot of people can have this honor to come here. I don't always know who is coming, but for example, for lunch, I think it's a Japanese or Chinese guy coming. I don't know. Must be very, you know, important. So you have to start a salad of lobster. Okay. After you have some pigeon, roast pigeon. And to start, they have a Pavillon Blanc of Chateau Margo, 2006. With the pigeon, they're going to drink the Chateau Margo, 1989. And with the cheese, then we have the Chateau Margo, 1959. These are quite old, of course, but yes, it's very good wine. I can tell you because I taste it all the time before serving it.
Entertaining is Margot's most beguiling weapon. Because the wine is sold via middlemen, there is never any danger that visitors will be prevailed upon to get out their checkbook after a good lunch.
Very, very good.
Instead, the best things in life can be appreciated untainted by commercial concerns.
What I checked now, the chairs, of course, also must be, you know, at the right place. All the book is very important. Madame Mentzelopoulos always liked the book, you know. Well done.
Today, it is the turn of Mr. and Mrs. Tong to enter Margot's warm embrace. Mr. Tong is a toy manufacturer from Hong Kong who has accumulated 6,000 bottles since he started drinking wine in 2003. He represents a market, Asia, that is being assiduously cultivated by the first-growth chateaus.
It's always interesting to taste these great vintages when young, just to dream of what they will become 20, 30, 40 years later, even more.
As a wine collector, I need patience. I know that I need patience. We can send a man to the moon. We can build a space lab in the sky, but we cannot speed up the aging process.
No. Paul's objective is simple: to impress upon Mr. Tong the Margaux wow factor. The tongs are tasting the legendary 05.
Oh, okay.
The 05 always amazed me. This is completeless. It has everything in place. It just takes time to put the puzzle all together. It's very complete. Will be interesting to see when the secondary flavor develops.
Yes.
Maybe after 10, 15 years. And
I guess more.
Well, how about 2008? I think we are going to harvest it end of September.
Yes, we still have more or less 1 month before the harvest truly starts. So honestly, all depends on the weather we will have now.
So if you can control the weather, what will you like to happen? I know we cannot control that.
If I could do it, I would really now ask for sunny and dry weather. On a un problème ici. Bon. Now, if it rains all the time, we may be in trouble. But if we have now nice weather, it may help.
It may help.
Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Margaux, often called the Versailles of the Médoc, is the most visited chateau in Bordeaux. And if you write long enough in advance, you might even get a guided tour.
First time?
First time to Bordeaux.
And are you amateurs, winemakers?
Amateurs.
Amateurs. Okay.
According to our wives, we're something else as well when it comes to
really?
wine.
Okay.
With its neoclassical facade and cathedral-like cellars, tourists become pilgrims, hoping that the mystery of wine may reveal itself.
So average time in oak?
For the Chateau Margo, approximately 20 to 24 months.
But only the privileged few are pleasured in the bosom of the chateau itself. 3 hours later, the tongs emerge, sated.
I've got the privilege of having you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well,
It's a nice lunch.
the point for us is to build up the image of Margaux as one of the best wines of the world, everywhere in the world. Asia is a new market, so obviously we make special efforts to be connected to these markets, which is why we invite these people whom we consider as opinion leaders.
It's wonderful.
It's a
privilege to dine in Chateau Margo, and we thoroughly enjoy it. Yeah. And it's just one of the best experiences in my life. Yeah.
Really?
Really, yes. It is.
What was so good?
Well, the wine and the atmosphere and the privilege to be with Paul, and then with such a long history of the Margaux, and I'm happy with something that I love, and finally I see it, and just like the Margaux wines, and then this is always amazing. And we open a bottle of the 1959 Margaux. It's always amazing for me to drink something older than myself. It's a wonderful vintage, of course. Yeah.
So you'll be buying more Margaux in the future?
Of course.
Yes, obviously, obviously, yes.
It's wonderful to feel that enthusiasm, which is now shared by most people in the world. This is just fascinating. Before, it was shared by a limited number of people, mainly from Western Europe and America, and now it's shared by virtually the entire world. Well, which is just great.
At the start of September, the harvest is about a month away, and whereas most producers are grateful for any assistance they can get, Margaux interviews potential harvesters.
Alors il me dit qu'après chaque sillon, il y avait 10 minutes de pause, c'est vrai?
Alors ça dépend de la vitesse à laquelle vous allez. Si vous voulez, c'est que chacun a son rang.
Donc vous êtes à Cantenac.
Cantenac, voilà.
Ok, vous êtes à la retraite peut-être?
Non.
Non.
Non, c'est au chômage.
C'est très dur, parce que tout le monde me dit que je vais pas y arriver.
Oui, c'est dur. Je ne vais pas vous dire le contraire.
Je vais
Donc, c'est vrai
mettre,
que ce qui est dur, c'est surtout le 3e, 4e jour.
Ouais.
Parce que là, le dos commence à travailler, quoi. C'est des muscles qui ne travaillent pas forcément.
Ok.
Je vous cache pas que j'ai fait la route pour venir vous voir, parce que je viens de Bretagne.
Ouais.
Ce serait plutôt positif ou je veux dire, ouais, d'accord.
Je peux pas vous cacher.
Je vous remercie.
Merci, monsieur.
Bonne fin de journée.
Au revoir.
Il existe comme un genre de coussin pour mettre par terre, pour se mettre au
Ça,
genou.
c'est chacun qui se débrouille.
Ouais,
Si vous voulez amener un coussin, vous posez.
Je trouve ça.
Bon, ce qu'il y a, c'est qu'il faut se baisser et se déplacer en même temps. Hein. Donc, forcément, c'est quand même du travail.
D'accord. Ok.
Voilà. Et merci beaucoup d'être venu.
Oui, et bien, bonne journée, à bientôt.
Merci.
What the weather takes with one hand, it gives with the other. A period of rain may be followed by a day of sunshine. But nature operates on different orders of magnitude. And the Sichuan earthquake that rocked China in May has caused a butterfly to flap its wings in Margaux in September.
But the nose is powerful and fine, more open today than that of the first wine.
I thought it could be a good idea to organize a charity event. The purpose of that charity dinner is to raise funds for the victims of the Sichuan earthquake. So, which makes a lot of sense, I think, because really, I think the Chinese people has been hurt by this dramatic natural disaster, and I think it's a good way, number one, to help them, and number two, to introduce us to a few Chinese wealthy people.
On the palate, it is extremely powerful, yet harmonious.
Paul and his assistant are putting the finishing touches on the tasting notes for the event, due to be held in Beijing before the start of the harvest.
Net profit donated to charity in support of recent Sichuan earthquake victims. Great.
China is a land of brands, and thanks to the economic miracle in the last few years, there are now plenty of people who can afford them. As a result, representatives of the first growth chateaus have discovered a newfound interest in the welfare of the Chinese people. The top Bordeaux chateaus have everything a successful luxury brand needs. They're expensive, they're limited edition, and they reek of status and old money. The dinner and auction are being held at the city's most exclusive venue, the Beijing Jockey Club, home from home for the seriously well-off. Margaux has shipped over bottles direct from its cellar. The theme is the lucky number 8, and the oldest vintage up for grabs is the 1918.
Merci.
Paul is inspecting the 82, one of 60 bottles that will be drunk by the guests this evening.
Check ça. C'est bon. C'est frais, c'est riche et c'est tendre. C'est cette espèce de... Moi, ce qui me fascine toujours dans ces vins...
Tasting good?
Tasting wonderful. The evolution within 2-3 hours will be amazing. Just to see how the flavors develop and evolve at the same time. The wine will gain more complexity, more openness, which is the reason why we decant.
It hasn't suffered in the boat from the boat to China.
I think it took the plane, and today the conditions of transport are much better looked after. We personally we pay a lot of attention to that.
When the bottle is sold, you will see the hammer come down.
Completing the assembly of top-notch international brands, an auctioneer from Sotheby's, Greg Harris, will be doing his bit for the victims of Sichuan.
Come up again. What's your strategy going to be this evening?
To make them stick their right hands up in the air as much as possible and spend as much money as they can.
And are they all fairly well off as far as you know?
I would imagine so, yes. Hopefully.
Sun-dried tomato.
As ever, the devil is in the detail, and the Margaux quest for perfection is enthusiastically adopted in Beijing.
Yes, this is amazing. This is a glass ice structure, ice sculpture.
As the ice melts in Beijing, the rain falls in Margaux. It rains on 14 of the first 20 days of September, and the grapes struggle to fully ripen. 2008 is starting to seem as though it could be a modest vintage. Julien, the vineyard manager, is on his daily tour to inspect the estate and empty the rainfall containers along the way. Even the greatest terroir in the world must suffer the indignities of the elements. The lack of sun has meant that grapes have ripened only patchily. A small army of workers has been drafted in to take out the bunches that are still green.
Voilà, tout ce qui est vert pour enlever.
Il y a un peu le milieu là, j'ai vu, sur les jeunes pousses.
Allez, on va continuer le tour.
These weakling grapes have made the ultimate sacrifice to maintain quality at the expense of quantity. Even if the weather picks up, such rigorous selection means that the 2008 will be a very limited edition of Margaux.
C'est la nature qui nous dote ou pas du potentiel à faire des grands vins ou non. Maintenant, il n'y a plus qu'à attendre que la nature nous aide un petit peu. Voilà, on va aller voir avec.
In Beijing, it is the evening of Margaux's great philanthropic event. The guests are the elite of China's elite. Government ministers, billionaires, and even the Italian ambassador. The chef has been flown in from Hong Kong.
This is tomato jelly with Boston lobster, with olive oil sherbet, balsamic reduction, and crispy garlic chips, first course. Hull.
Each ticket has been priced at a lucky 8,888 RMB. That's about £800 a head.
Chateau Margo is honored, proud and happy to co-organize, together with the Hong Kong-Beijing Jockey Club, this dinner benefiting the Sichuan earthquake victims. This dramatic event reminds us how the earth is at times capable of the worst. But we know it can also be capable of the best, particularly under the sweet name of terroir. Thank you for your attention.
Asia's newfound and carefully cultivated interest in the fine wines of Bordeaux is credited with being one of the things that has pushed up prices to their current giddy heights. The Chinese and Hong Kong markets together spend over $1 billion on fine wine a year. But faith in the first growths is about to be tested. The star item on this evening's auction is an Imperial Magnum, that's 8 bottles, of the 2008 vintage that hasn't even fully ripened yet.
Here we go. Now, to start this off, let's start at, who'll give me, let's say 12,000 renminbi, 13,000, thank you, 14,000 now. It's at 15,000, paddle number 1, thank you, sir.
15,000块钱，这位先生。
Thank you, 16,000, back with you, sir. 17,000, 18,000, back with you.
19,000块人民币。
20,000, right over there.
20,000块钱人民币，19号这位先生。
24,000, paddle number 1, 24,000 with you, sir. Yes or no? No. Yeah, no.
32,000。
26. 26,000. With the gentleman here, it's against you, sir. It's not you. Was that a bid, sir? It is now. 28,000. Thank you, sir. I see you. 30,000. Is 30 all right, madam? 30,000. You do the bidding, let him write the checks. He'll say 42. It's for a good call. He'll say 42,000. There it is. 42,000. 44,000. 46,000 with the lady on the left. 48,000. Thank you, sir. 50,000. A nice round number. 52,000. 55. You can come again. 55,000. There it is. Pour her a large one. Should we say 60 or 58? Up to you. You're out. Thank you anyway. It's your bid, madam. At 55,000 renminbi. I'm going to sell this. Sell at 55,000 then.
The Imperial of 2008 sells for about 5,000 British pounds. Only the weather in Margaux will determine if this will or won't be a shrewd investment. 8 lots raise a total of just over £100,000, and one of the most hotly contested is an opportunity to follow in the steps of the Tongs and lunch at Margaux itself. The 2 successful ladies who have paid £10,000 for the privilege may truly be described as converts to the faith.
Thank you so very much for your wonderful evening, for wonderful dinner. Oh my goodness. Yes, we will.
Really? Are you going to be there?
Wow.
By the end of the evening, Margaux has cemented its foothold on the highest slopes of the Chinese social landscape.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You don't have wine. Where's the wine?
Thanks a lot. You did very well.
So well.
Thank you.
As soon as he can decently leave, Paul must hasten to Margaux. The most important decision of the year is when to harvest. The goal is maximum ripeness. Pick too soon, and you may miss out on those last rays of sun that can transform a miserable year. But if you wait, you risk the possibility of rain, and with rain comes rot, and with rot comes ruin. In order to stop the rot, as the end of September arrives, more leaves are stripped from the vine, so the grapes can better soak up any sun that comes their way. In the last 10 days of September, the sun finally starts to shine. For Paul and his team, the time has come to make a decision about when to start the harvest.
Je pense que dans tous les cas, on n'est pas très pressé de vendanger.
Oui. Enfin, l'idée serait, en fait, de ne pas vendanger demain et jeudi. Écoutez, la météo
mercredi soir,
variable. Je crois que demain il fait variable mais sans pluie.
Oui, voilà.
Mais samedi, dimanche, plutôt beau.
Non, samedi, dimanche, couvert, mais
couvert.
Pas...
Enfin, ouais.
Ça a l'air pas très méchant.
Ça peut changer. D'autant plus que c'est pas parce qu'il tombera 10 ou 15 mm que ça fera du mal. Enfin, franchement, I think that with the weather which we've got in the last couple of days, we have now the real possibility of achieving, if not a great vintage, but a very, very good one. We still have to wait a few more days before being sure. I will just feel saddened if we can't achieve what I think we might achieve now.
Margaux decides to gamble. It waits, and waits, and waits. Eventually, on October the 3rd, one of the latest dates in Margaux's history, the harvest begins. The harvesters have also been waiting. An army of 200 has been recruited.